Chapter 14, England and France develop. In the last chapter, one of the topics was the constant invasions of different locations in Europe. One of the areas that was quite often invaded was that of modern-day England. Mostly Vikings from the north and Anglo-Saxons from areas of Denmark and other parts of Europe came into England and took over the land, combining cultures. So the Vikings and Anglo-Saxons controlled much of the land in England. One group that changed all of this were the Normans. The Normans were from northern France in what is modern day Normandy. Normandy will become a famous World War II site, which was the launch invasion on D-Day. In 1066, a famous battle took place that settled a conflict between France and England. Armies of about 20,000 Norman warriors, combined with different types of armies, went on the offensive. The Norman conquest was led by William the Conqueror, a famous king who will eventually be credited with the unification of England. He defeated his rival to become king. William kept 1/5 of the land and handed out the rest to his supporters, those who backed him in the battle. By taking control of all of England, William began to unify England. Hastings was located right here, very close to modern-day London. English government evolves. English rulers wanted to control both England and France. Henry II, son of William the Conqueror, becomes king. He gains more French land through marriage. Henry is king in England but a vassal in France. Did you know that two ways in which medieval kings would gain more land was either through war, which has been common through history, or marrying other royal spouses who controlled land? Eleanor Aquitaine, an area located on the western side of France, was controlled by England. Her marriage to Henry brings about the alliance between France and England. She also is noted for the idea that she married two different kings. She was also a mother of two different kings, Richard the Lionhearted and King John. Some of the consequences of the invasions. First, the expansion of castles in England. The moat and the Bailey castles began to be built across England with the idea that they were going to be protected from these constant medieval battles. Fear, submission, wealth, and envy were all part of the life of medieval times in England. The second consequence was a combination of French and English language that developed over time. As you can see from the picture down here, French and English combined with Latin brought about many of the changes in languages still very important to the English language that we know today. Societal changes. Intermarriage among common and higher ranked levels of society became common during this period of time. The population, especially in cities and towns, was on the rise, and changes in rural areas with the idea of crop rotations kept England quite profitable. Wool processing in England became a number one resource. New jobs formed, construction of buildings, cathedrals, and other jobs, craft-related jobs, became part of society. The economy was on the rise in the 10th century. Markets rose, especially in towns. Kings and lords raised the money and became quite wealthy. They began to use coins again, which caused a change in trade. They began to form boroughs, or small towns, in which trade took place. And there was a strength in the hierarchical society, so those who were on the top became stronger and more wealthy as we begin to see a working class begin. English government. Henry sent judges to all parts of England, which caused a change in what is known as common law. So judges would make decisions on court cases, which was a change in society. Common law becomes the basis of law in many English-speaking countries, including will eventually be part of U.S. government. The Magna Carta has a tremendous role in the change in law. In 1215, an English king, King John, who will become the only King John in the history of English government for his notable failures, was in constant battle with the nobles, and in the end, his blunders caused him to sign forcibly sign the Magna Carta, which limits the power of the king and guarantees basic political rights. It's important to us in history because it granted nobles or people of less power more rights while taking away the power of the king. The idea that we must obey the law, or that everybody must obey the law, even the king, will become part of our U.S. Constitution, and the idea that everybody is guaranteed rights, which are important in modern liberty and justice. Parliament was formed in England in 1295 when Edward I summoned wealthy townsmen and knights to raise taxes. Together, the bishops and the lords formed Parliament, or the legislative body, law-making body in England. Parliament had two houses, the House of Lords and the House of Commons. The beginning of French history, or the rise of France. Before this particular time, the Franks, who controlled modern-day France for a good chunk of time, their dynasty was coming to an end as the new French dynasty, led by Hugh Cabot, a duke from central France, began to rule. The Capetian ruled France from Paris, from 987 to 1328. Why might they control Paris, and why was it so important? Paris became the capital city and was located on a river near trade routes and the English Channel, which formed a close connection between England and France, also causing years of conflict between France and England over land. Philip II was the most powerful of the rulers, who ruled from 1180 to 1223. He expanded land control by French kings. He also established a bailiff to collect taxes and run courts, which is still used today. You can see the blue area expanding on the map. The red was once controlled by England, and the blue areas, especially in modern-day Paris, is beginning to spread. Comparing England and France, William the Conqueror's invasion in 1066 led to many changes. Henry II introduced jury in the English courts. John agreed to sign the Magna Carta in 1215, which led to more individual human rights. And Edward I called for what is the modern-day Parliament in 1295. In French history, Hugh Cabot increased the territory of France. Philip II established a bailiff to preside over courts and collect taxes. And Louis IX created a French appeals court. Appeals courts still used in the U.S. government system. And Philip IV added the Third Estates, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. The Estates General. The Estates General were meetings on which three groups of people from France would gather to make decisions on laws. The first estate was led by church leaders, the second estate led by the lords, and the third estate were the commoners, landholders, and merchants. The three groups would meet to discuss important issues and laws in France. The Estates General will become a major issue as you'll study the French Revolution next year, as it becomes an increasingly unfair system in which the first two estates would gain most of the power while the third estate would not have as much of a vote. Democracy. The beginning of French and English democracy, or the democracy we know of today in the United States, was established through many of the traditions during this period of time. A centralized government was created to rule widespread lands in France and England. Common law and court systems supported central governments, and commoners or everyday people were included in making decisions.